The aim of this lecture is to answer the question: how can a company decide between make or buy? After this lecture, you will be able to understand how fashion and luxury firms decide between making components and products in-house, or rather buy them from suppliers, and in that case, how. In the previous lecture, we have seen that today companies buy products and services for up to 80% of their sales. However, it is still very important to consider carefully what is preferable to buy and what is still better to make in-house. This is not a decision that is made once and remains valid forever. Rather, it needs to be revised periodically. While in the past we have observed a trend towards outsourcing more and more, today fashion and luxury firms are selectively making some counter-tendency moves by reinsourcing some critical production activities. Before discussing the drivers for make or buy decisions, it is important to introduce a preliminary distinction between two fundamental ways of buying. We define competitive buying, the case in which there are many available suppliers for the same object, and therefore it is possible to leverage on competition among them to obtain the best prices. This is typically the case of rather standardized products and services, offered by many suppliers who are easily interchangeable, and therefore relationships are generally short-term. Even fashion and luxury products include several of them, such as basic materials like cotton, or standard components such as zippers or basic packaging. On the other hand, there is the case of collaborative buying, in which only one or very few suppliers are available, and so there is not much space for competition among them. In this case, buyers prefer to set up long-term relationships and to look for benefits different from the lowest price, such as the best quality and service level, customized products, innovation, exclusivity, and so on. This is often the case for fashion and luxury firms who need to source rare materials, customized components, and exclusive design and innovation. So the make or buy dilemma actually becomes a threefold one: make, buy collaboratively, or buy competitively. Collaborative buying can be seen as an intermediate solution between the two extremes, since it partially offers some of the benefits of make, such as customization, exclusivity, and innovation, while still relying on external suppliers instead of internal resources. But how can a company actually decide whether to go for make, buy collaboratively, or buy competitively? The answer may be different for each product and service that is needed. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. To make this decision, companies look at three strategic drivers: competencies, costs, and capital, the three C's. Competencies refer to the extent to which a certain product or service requires capabilities that are a unique feature of the firm. The so-called core competencies are those exclusive sets of knowledge and skills that allow a company to differentiate itself from competitors and to convince customers to buy their products. You can think, for example, at the unique style of a fashion designer, or the exclusive craftsmanship of a watchmaker, or the technological excellence of a company like Ferrari. These competencies are a source of competitive advantage, and therefore must be jealously retained in-house. On the contrary, there are many other competencies that are required but not directly owned by the company, while being available on the supply market. In this case, buy is the answer. In particular, collaborative buying is the choice when suppliers offer competencies that are adding high value to the final product and are still recognized by the customer. Here, the exclusivity of a long-term collaborative relationship provides a good balance between the access to external resources and the protection of the competitive advantage, like in the case of the partnership between Ferrari and Brembo. Finally, When the required competencies are standard, non-differential, and easily available on the market, competitive buying is the preferred choice. The second driver regards costs. When suppliers can offer lower costs compared to the make solution, buying becomes preferable if the priority is to reduce costs. This may happen because suppliers operate on a larger scale, or on the contrary, because they are small firms with little overheads, or because they leverage lower labor costs. However, this is not generally the priority for high-end fashion and luxury firms. But make or buy decisions have also another implication on costs. In the case of make, costs are mainly fixed, since make requires having employees, machinery, facilities that generate costs independently from the final demand. In the case of competitive buying instead, costs become completely variable. The customer pays only for the amount of products that are actually needed, making the company much more flexible and capable of adapting to volatile markets, which is often the case in fashion. Also in this case, collaborative buying is halfway between make and competitive buying, since costs are not fixed, but only partially variable, given the long-term commitments to suppliers that are required. Finally, the last driver is capital, that is, the investments required. Make requires investments in both physical assets, such as machinery and equipment, and intangible assets, such as R&D and intellectual property, and all these require significant financial resources. In the case of competitive buying instead, suppliers take care of the capital investments. So buy becomes the only alternative for newborn companies who lack the resources to invest by themselves. But also established firms who want to enter new businesses may do it by relying on suppliers. Alternatively, large firms may decide to outsource operations in mature and declining businesses to free up resources to invest in new ones. Collaborative buying is again an intermediate solution because it often implies shared investments by both customer and supplier. In summary, in this lecture, you have learned that the make or buy dilemma is actually threefold, including make, collaborative buying, and competitive buying. And the choice among them depends on three strategic drivers: competencies, costs, and capital.